Hi, Carlotta. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you, Nick.
Thank you for joining us on this Smorgas interview. Um, I've been looking forward to this interview with you because we work together as part of the Emzingo team. The others have already done the interviews, so you're the third and final one. We are going to do a group one where you all get together. But for now, it's just you and I. So thanks for coming.
Thank you for the invitation, and it is a pleasure to be here. I was very excited for this experience, and it feels good to be from the other side because I already interviewed you. Now it's your turn to interview me.
Yeah, well, I was actually joking with you about that before this call. For those of you who haven't seen, Carlota interviewed Nicole and myself on a podcast, but we've also shared some things on like LinkedIn and a few other platforms, and that was a really, really awesome experience. So, Carlota, just to let you know, I am a little bit nervous here because you kicked ass when you were doing yours. So hopefully, I do it justice.
No, you just ask questions. It's very easy.
Oh,
It's
okay,
just
cool.
questions, and then it's my work. So
okay, so I'll ask the questions and I'll smile as well every so often and be like, "Hey."
that's what I do exactly.
Okay. Awesome. Well, start off with the first question. So everyone has been learning about the different members of Emzingo and, learning a bit about them as individuals. So I'd like to find out about your background or your story.
It's interesting because that's actually the first question I asked you and Nicole.
Oh, awesome.
Uh-huh. And it's a very open question. You can really explore it in different ways. But I feel like my story would be that I spent most of my life in Porto, Portugal. I went to the same school for 18 years. I had the same friends. I was staying in the same home. And I always had this urge to express myself, but I did so in private. I turned to writing. And so I felt like in my life, in my external life, I didn't really express myself. I wasn't talking with people about the things that I was passionate about. I was not challenging myself. And so for me, and this is part of my story, I think I only opened my eyes completely when I moved abroad to pursue a degree in communication, because I didn't have to actually go abroad. I could just, in the sense that I didn't have to move to another country. I think it would be the same if I'd moved to a different city. But just the fact that I went out of my home and my bubble and gained perspective of my life and what I was doing, I was able to deconstruct and observe and criticize what I was doing and the person that I was being. And so I believe that's when I started really taking ownership of my life, because up until that point, I feel like the way I had to channel this uneasiness that I've always felt inside was through sports.
Okay.
Playing volleyball, that was my thing. I was playing volleyball, but now I feel like my thing is really expressing myself through speaking, through my podcast that we'll talk about in a little bit, through my writing. But it was only after I moved to Spain that I was not only allowed, because people didn't expect me, because that back home people were expecting me to be someone, or at least I thought so. And when I moved abroad, I could start again. I could start over and I could start building confidence and maybe trying things that I haven't tried in the past, and saying things that I didn't say in the past. So my story now is, now that I discovered that I was kind of sleepwalking through my waking state one time, I will not allow myself, I will not allow that to happen again. So I would say that's my story.
And that's very cool. And when did you have this awakening? At what age, and how long have you been doing it for now?
Well, I don't consider myself woke, but there was definitely some kind of awakening. I feel like I was always a little bit of a weird kid, of an outsider, ever since I remember being conscious. And as I mentioned before, I turned to writing. I wrote, it was something that I did privately. And so I think my life was pretending that I was okay to the external world, but when I was alone, I felt an emptiness. And I feel like that emptiness is still with me, and it was always there. And I would dare to say that every human being feels this emptiness. But at that point, when I was young, I felt like there was something wrong with me for feeling that way. And I tried to cover that with food. I tried to cover that with sports. I tried to cover that with writing. And I tried to cover that with other people as well. But it was only when, again, I moved to Spain and I started hearing about things like spirituality, or breathing or meditation. And I think that different people can deal with that emptiness inside in different ways. So I'm not claiming that meditation is the way for everyone, or yoga is the way for everyone. I think everyone has their tools. But for me, it was that made me realize that emptiness is just an existential emptiness that is inevitable to the human experience. But that was my awakening. The awakening of there's nothing wrong with you. It's okay for you to feel like that. And only having that compassion towards myself was the thing that made me feel safer and more welcome to the world. And I could express myself freely, because then I knew that I'm not the only one feeling like this. I have no problems then talking about my vulnerabilities, because I know I'm not alone.
I think that's awesome. And that willingness to be vulnerable is not always easy. But it's something that I think is a strength of character that really can put you in great situations, in great stead for the things that are, to follow. I know when we spoke on your podcast, we spoke about like being real and the challenges that you face and how those challenges form who you are. And those challenges also are part of your life experience. And like you as a person are formed by a combination of the experiences that you have. And with what you're basically describing now, a portion of your life being kind of like sheltered or in one scenario, and then all of a sudden breaking free and redefining yourself or reinventing yourself. I think it must have been quite a big step for you and quite a brave one. But I think it's definitely paying off. I think you are achieving some awesome stuff. And one of those things is your podcast. So do you want to tell us about your podcast?
Yes, I would love to tell you about my podcast. But just, I think that it's important to make this note before, because
Sure.
that will lead to the podcast, and it's related to the previous question. I think we were talking about breaking free, and I really did feel like I broke free when I moved abroad, because even my identity, my perception of myself changed. So when I was in Porto, and it was not like my friends were not good, that I love my friends and I love my family from Porto. It's just that I was always, the persona that I was in Porto was a very shy and scared girl. And this is because the conversations that I listen out there were superficial. And I never, I'm terrible at small talk. So I tried to fit in those conversations, but I couldn't. So I felt like I didn't know how to speak. I didn't know how to connect with people. And only when I went abroad, I understood that there's nothing wrong with me. It's just that my nature is a nature that I like to express myself, but I like to have deep conversations. It's not that I have a problem speaking. It's just that the topics that people were talking about, they were not of my interest. And I also, at that time, I wasn't evolved enough to find other people, right? And to go out there and explore. So I say this because the Carlota that was in Porto, and I did 1 year of university in Porto, could never have started a podcast. Like I remember my first year in university in Porto, I would literally blush to every new student I would meet because I didn't know how to do small talk, you know? So the difference is just ridiculous, because now I feel like now I've found a group of people that understands me and that allows me to talk about the things that I like to talk about, and the things that in my opinion matter to me. And that's why I started the podcast, because even though my friends like talking about this, I literally try to turn everything into a deep, meaningful conversation. So that's why I started the podcast, so my friends wouldn't get upset. No, I'm kidding. The podcast, the podcast was, I think, is what symbolizes this change, and it is me. The podcast is me. It's an excuse for me to talk with people that inspire me. It's an excuse for me to challenge myself, to learn, to grow. And so yes, one day I was here in this room actually, and I was thinking that I love podcasts. I just listened to a podcast, and then I was thinking it would be really cool if I started a podcast. I love talking with my friends about
DMC stuff.
I don't like using deep, meaningful conversations too much, because then I just I'm talking about the universe all the time. But the reality is that most of my time I'm talking about the universe. So let's just admit it, you know. Yeah, and I remember from the moment I had the idea of okay, I'm gonna start a podcast, and the idea then was just I'm gonna invite my friends, and we're gonna just have the conversations that we always have. From that moment, this was last summer, to me actually sitting down and recording the first episode, 6 months, and these were 6 months that I was doubting myself. It was also when I moved from Segovia, little town in Spain, to Madrid, to a big city, to live alone for my first time, and that was necessary for me to have that down of I can't do this, I'm not good enough, what will I say, my English is not perfect. I needed to have that down for me to rebuild myself again and to rise up with the confidence and with help of other people. And yeah, I went to some personal development programs, let's put it like this, with a lot of reading and sharing that really helped me. But now I felt like life happens in cycles, and I needed that. So yep. And then when I recorded my first episode in Madrid with a friend of mine in my studio in Madrid, and then the COVID-19 happened, so I went back to Portugal. But in a way, for me, it actually helped me, because if I was doing the podcast like I was doing initially, face-to-face only, I would probably at that point would not have the courage to invite certain people. And so the fact that I continue my podcast and I would invite guests online was a way for me to feel more comfortable inviting people that are not necessarily my close friends like you, because I can control more the environment. And now yesterday I had another physical face-to-face conversation, and everything happened step by step. So I feel like for me, I don't know what was coming next, but for me the podcast is climbing up a little bit more in my ladder, you know?
I think, in some ways, COVID-19 has been a real bad thing. But then I think in other ways, it has given a lot of people or pushed a lot of people in different directions. And in some way, it made them grow and look at other opportunities. Because now, you're not restricted to anything geographical. You can interview anybody anywhere in the world. Right now, you're in Porto, right? And I'm here in South Africa, and that's awesome. So I think you just got to keep doing that. And as you said, now, once COVID, recedes or, drops a little bit, you'll hopefully carry on doing what you're doing. maybe some people in person, but then again, some people that wouldn't be in your normal circles, and then do them over, online or whatever. I think it's really cool. And then you seem like very motivated, and you've got this drive, and you were talking about going on self-development and everything. So what keeps you motivated? What keeps you going?
Yes, I'm debating whether I add something on what you just said about the COVID-19.
Do it.
Because this is actually something I was asking my guests when the outbreak happened. I was asking to all of them, like, how do you feel about this? How are you facing the situation? And I always feel like I was always like thinking to myself, should I ask this or not? Because I feel like I'm always speaking from a privileged perspective, right? So who am I to talk about COVID if I don't even have to think about money because my parents are paying for my bills, right? Who am I to talk about what's happening if I didn't lose my job, or I didn't have to think about all of these things that so many people are talking about if I don't have a health issue, right? And for sure, like, I had some friends that are in very difficult situations, and I can't talk about that, but I can talk about my perspective. And I'm sure that there are also some people that identify with me. So that's why I always ask the questions. But from my experiences, what I gained from COVID, what I learned from that experience is, well, we can talk about some spiritual meaning, but that is kind of pointless, because we'll never know if there's actually something behind this, a reason behind what happened. But for me, it was just a lesson and an invitation for me to focus only on the things that we can control. That I can control, and don't think about the rest. And also get rid of distractions and really understand what is essential in my life. And for sure, the fact that I didn't have to meet so many people, the fact that I didn't have so many distractions in terms of events. And I'm like, okay, I know the people that I really care about, and I'm going to call these people. I have the podcast, and I have the Emzingo, or whatever I'm doing. It's what I need to be happy. So for me, it was really that. Just get rid of what is unnecessary in your life.
Yeah. I think I did the same. I think a lot of people did the same. It gave you, especially when you're in like lockdown level 1, where for us, it's level 5, where you couldn't do anything. You're stuck at home. You can't really go outside unless you're going for, necessities. You're stuck there, and you kind of have that time to slow down and reflect and say, like, okay, what do I need to do? And how am I going to use my time? And for me, obviously what you were saying now is true. Some people have a really, really bad experience with COVID. And if you had to ask them, they would have a completely different answer. And some of those people are my friends. But for me, it was a bit of both. I've got bills to pay, and times were a bit tough because I didn't have as much business coming in. But then at the same time, COVID forced me to reflect and slow down. And now, yes, we're still in the midst of COVID, and we still have restrictions and whatever. But I do have the opportunity to do a bit more, but I've chosen to slow down and reflect on how I'm doing things. And even when it goes back to normal, will I do things exactly the way I was doing them before? Probably not, because I've had this opportunity to reflect and make choices and not just react. I think I was so busy before COVID that I was just like, okay, I need to do this. I need to get here. And I was literally living from getting into the car, rushing to the next place and doing that, and then rushing to the next place, and then rushing home. And then even at home, it wasn't relaxed. It was like rush. Whereas now I'm trying to take things a little bit slower, I'm not always good at it. You know this because, we've worked together. I'm a workaholic, but I'm aware that I'm a workaholic, and I'm trying, they say the first step to recovery is acceptance, right? So I've accepted that I'm a workaholic. So I'm trying to...
I think you're a workaholic for the right reasons. So.
Thank you. Cool. So I know you have a mantra, am I right? That you follow or that you are currently using to keep you going.
Yes, and that ties also with the question that you had before of the personal development and the motivation. My mantra, I'm using this for quite a few months now.
Okay.
Is I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be.
Oh, cool.
And this is just a reminder that after a tough period before I started the podcast, and we can even talk about the outbreak, just thinking and feeling I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. Don't try to escape and think what would it be like if I had this, or if I would, or that, and if this didn't happen. No, I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. So that's what has been helping me lately.
That's awesome. And I think you are right in what you're saying. I mean, if you think about it, you're exactly where you're meant to be. Kind of gives a person comfort and confidence in what they're doing and where they are. If you're always thinking about where you're, other opportunities, or rather like, maybe I shouldn't be here, or maybe I shouldn't be doing this, or I shouldn't be doing that, and I should be doing something else. You're spending your time thinking on things that aren't exactly happening. And I think it also kind of forces you to do the best, or see the best in the opportunities that you currently have. You're in this situation, and you're dealing with it the best you can, and you're here now, living in the present in that current situation. So I know for me as a person with a disability, it's the same. You can't deny that you have the disability, and you can't say if only this, or if I was someone else, or whatever. That's not going to help you. So I think that's really cool.
Yes. And yeah, I don't want to, I have no idea about the time, but I was just gonna say that I relate a lot to what you were saying. And then the other thing that helps me, because as you were speaking, I was thinking of this, the other thing that really helps me as a perfectionist is, and ties with I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be, is you don't have to be 100% ready, because if you wait for the 100%, then you'll never do the thing that you're trying to do. So the other rule that I adopted is, first of all, just go. If there's something challenging, something they're afraid to do, just go. And then it has to be 70% good or ready. Like editing a podcast, if I'm thinking if I'm ready to interview someone, if this works 70%, if this is okay 70%, then I'm gonna release it, or I'm gonna do the interview, and not overthink.
I read a book on entrepreneurship a few years back, and one of the chapters was on good enough. And they say exactly that. They say, some companies almost fail, or even refuse to start, because they're always searching for perfection. Can they release this because it's not perfect? Or can they do that because it's not perfect? And this book actually dedicated a whole chapter to saying, you don't release perfect, because perfect will never happen. You release good enough. And that's exactly what you're saying now. I think they even maybe said 70% as well. So, you're never going to get something that's perfect, but as soon as it's good enough, you release it and you do it, because also that's when you learn and improve. Because if something's perfect, it can never be improved, right? And it can, if it was perfect, also that means that there's no opportunities for growth or to push you. Whereas if something isn't perfect, it gives you that opportunity to go like, hold on, like I experienced this. What happens if I do that? Like, for example, now I'm interviewing you over Zoom. And is this the best platform for meetings and stuff, yes. For podcasts and interviews like this, probably not. So one of the ways I can improve it is looking for a different platform and then pushing myself to learn that different platform. So yeah, I think it's really, really cool.
But there's actually not a platform to record video and image at the same time for a podcast. Well, not one that I'm aware of. So there's a business opportunity there.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to look it up, and if I do find one, I'll let you know.
Okay, thank you.
So, what are your plans for the future? Because I mean, you're a very busy person, and you're doing a lot of things. So, what are your plans for the podcast, or academically or whatever?
I can talk about short term and long term.
Cool.
But I like to. I did an online class, a webinar, some months ago, that was talking about to-do lists and goals, and it proposed that instead of thinking of what you want to do, thinking and what you have to do, and your plans, just thinking and connecting to how you want to feel.
Oh.
And this is actually what I've been trying to do lately. So long term and even short term, I like to think first, how do you want to feel? Do you want to feel creative? Do you want to feel successful? Do you want to feel grateful? And then from that place of you connecting to the feeling, then figuring out how you'll get to the feeling. And this helped me choose an internship. This helped me choose the Emzingo program. Friendships, it helps me with everything. And you can choose the same words for pretty much anything in your life. That's what I chose 3. My words for this year were inspired, grateful, and abundant. And so every time that I'm making a decision, I think that this is how I want to feel. And so short term, my plans for the future are, I am starting an internship in September.
Okay.
With an urban planning firm in Canada. So this online thing is what you were talking about before. It's very exciting. It's interesting that people connect from different places, and that you create this bond that I feel like I have with you, with Nicole, and the team, and Bran and Mathilde. But I really like it. Now that I've stopped resisting. So I'm excited for that, because they also have a podcast. They do a podcast. It's called the 360-degree city, and they talk about how can cities be more intelligent. So talking about how can we improve cities, but from the point of view, like from a human point of view. And so they really talk about everything that matters in society. So I will be helping them with that, and I'll help them with the content creation. I'm doing communication, so that's really the ideal internship. And then I'll continue my podcast, obviously, Waking Youth. Keep inviting people that inspire me, and I will be having 2 classes. I'll do a hybrid semester. So this is short term and long term. To be honest, I'm very open. I just want to know that what drives me is purpose and people and my curiosity. So for as long as I am helping people and connecting to people, it doesn't matter through a podcast, through a book. I definitely want to write a book at some point. Cool. That's on my to-do list, not my feeling list. But I like to believe and trust that if I am present and if I pay attention to the hints that are presented to me in the present, that will guide me somewhere, and that's how I'll find my path. So I don't have like a fixed path and goals. I'll just go with the flow.
The way you like, I can't even make a sentence. It's just that awesome. The way you like saying that you're being led by emotions and whatever, I think that's really, really cool. Like I've never heard it before. not make, like, I'm a to-do list guy. I make lists all over the place. I mean, that's why I
But
got
you
a
can
board
do
behind.
to-do lists as well.
Yeah, but not like, I've never used feelings to guide the list. And I mean, now that you say it, it kind of makes sense, but I mean, it must be a bit hard to initiate at the beginning, get your, wrap your mind around it. But I think that's really cool. So if anyone watching this has done it before, please make a comment. And if you like it, please also make a comment, because we'd like to, be on this journey with you during your time of reframing your to-do lists and making it feeling lists. And then also you mentioned in there Emzingo, which is obviously where we connected. Because we did an Emzingo project together. And obviously we're going to have a joint interview where all of us will be together, and then, our followers will learn all about what we did together. But how did you come across Emzingo? What drew you to it, and what drew you to the Smorgasbord project?
So Emzingo, it's interesting to travel back in time and see, because now I'm here talking to you after the program is over. So it's really cool, that feeling. Well, I had a class it was called Innovation Lab Creativity Tools with Pablo, one of the managing partners of Emzingo. And he mentioned the program very, very briefly. And of course, it sounded super, super interesting. So I went and talked to him to learn more. And initially, actually, I was going to Peru for 2 months for a similar kind of program, obviously face-to-face. But then that didn't happen, and I ended up in South Africa because the time difference wasn't so drastic. So I would be in Peru, actually. Yes, and I think that it was very interesting that at that point that opportunity arose for me, because at that point a lot of I did some projects before, but I never did an internship during the summer. For 1 month, 2 months, I did something for 3 weeks, 4 weeks, but it wasn't very serious. And so this was actually my first experience. And I lost my train of thought. Give me 1 second. Sure. I remember. And at that point, I was feeling very stressed. So this was before summer, because my friends were all applying for internships, both for the summer and for the semester after, and they were all going for the conventional options, Amazon and consultancy companies. And I'm like, okay, I have to do something. And then I talked with Pablo, and I said, okay, Emzingo, this is perfect, like I can sell this as an internship. I will be doing something, but it's social impact, and I'll be meeting people. Plus, I get to travel to Peru for 2 months, So this is why I got in, and fortunately, I got accepted, and then everything happened with the COVID, and then I was like, okay, I'm not going to do this online. It's going to be so boring, 1 month online in front of the screen, and then I'm like, okay, no. What else are you going to do during your summer? So I'm going to make the best out of this experience, and so I continued, and here we are. And it's so cool to understand that if you're actually working with people who are passionate, people who wants to make a difference in the world, then it doesn't matter if you're in front of a screen. It just matters that you're creating something together that is meaningful, and that makes me feel alive. And so I'm very happy, because now all my future professional decisions will have this in mind, that it is possible for you to work with people who are equally driven by people and wanting to change something.
Yeah, regardless of where they are in the world, or what challenges you might face. I mean, as you mentioned now, you would have been in Peru, but because of COVID, you ended up joining us online. And so there, out of interest, is another positive to COVID, which I say, like, thank you, COVID, yay! Because, working with you was awesome, and working with your team was awesome. And I think also with not being restricted to, limits like geographical positioning or whatever, also broadens your mind. And you say, okay, I would have liked this, but is it necessary? And then, if it is, then obviously it's a deal breaker. But if it's not, are there other opportunities or other ways you can get around it? So I think, like us working together, we had a lot of stuff on Dropbox, and then we used Google Drive, and we've used Zoom and a whole bunch of different platforms, because they each held a different thing that we needed. And so we did make plans along the way, and I think it was really cool.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I agree completely. And then you also asked me why I chose Smorgasbord, but just to add a note on what you were saying just now.
Yeah.
I honestly, I'm very surprised by how positive working online was, because I feel like I can do much more, and I can go for a run in the morning and then have my coffee while listening to my podcast, and then jump immediately to a call with Smorgasbord, and then turn off and go and work on my podcast. And it's all and so for me, the fact that you don't have to commute, and the fact that more and more tools are being presented to us to help us improve our experiences online, I think there's no point in resisting it. This will be the future, inevitably. Of course, I love the human experience, and I think that will always be there as well. But it's like you were saying, if we can avoid a trip, and even in terms of the environment, we will be contributing to not damaging the environment so much. So why not do it? And then the why I chose Smorgasbord, I can answer that because we left it. It's funny because I try not to, I know I'm a big overthinker, and my family and my friends sometimes make fun of me because I can get quite indecisive, especially with food, for example. When I go to restaurants, I'm like, well, but if I choose this, then I will not have this, and I really want to experience this, So when I know I have to make a decision, I am very rational about it. I give it like some time for me to think, but not overthink and not stress about it. And with Smorgasbord, it was the same thing. When I had several projects that I was interested in. I did a pros and cons list. But then it's funny because if you really, at least I like to think so, if you really pay attention, then your intuition will tell you, but there's this one here. And with Smorgasbord, that was definitely the case. I think that the main reason, like, first of all, my uncle has a disability as well.
Okay.
And I felt I don't have a close relationship to him. Now we're much closer. But I wanted to understand what it is, and the fact that you are really trying to solve challenges for people with disabilities. I thought that this was an opportunity for me to connect with him and to understand the issue of accessibility, of inclusion, and so that's the first reason. And then also you had a lot of communication in that project. And of course I did a bit of research, and you guys seem very authentic. You seem very authentic, and I thought we could do something cool. So I knew, like, I applied to others, but Smorgasbord was first, and I'm like, nope, I want to get here.
Well, that's awesome. And I know through our experience, I kind of know the answer, but I just want to touch on it here. So do you think you've gained what you wanted out of the program? You were saying you wanted to find out more about inclusivity or inclusion and learn more and bring, yourself and your dad close together and things like that. Do you think you were successful in that outcome?
I don't think so, Nick.
Okay.
No, I'm kidding. I think that, first of all, you and Nicole, you made me learn so much and grow so much as a human being. I couldn't be more grateful to you and happier, because work didn't feel like work at any point. I was so excited, and I am still so excited, and I don't know, you know that above all, no, there were many things, so I can't name and remember them all. But I think that I had one, before I engage in this experience, one thing that I was afraid of is that, and in general, my professional life, I didn't want things to get too serious. And I've talked to you about this before. I don't want to just have a job from 9 to 5 where I'm not really smiling and not making jokes, and then do something that I'm not that passionate about, not really helping anyone, and just like selling something, you know, that's not something for me. And so to know that there are people out there like you who are human and are vulnerable, or are not afraid of being vulnerable, and are courageous, that was the biggest lesson of all, that I just have to find my people, because they're out there, like I found you. And what was your question again?
Do you think you have reached the outcomes or the goals that you first went and chose us for? You know, you said in learning along the way and joining our program, but I think you have answered that. Yeah.
No, I had no idea that it was going to be this good. Like, it exceeded expectation in every way possible.
Well, likewise, but I don't want to spoil the discussion that we're going to have as a group, because we were totally blown away by the work that you and your team did. So I think it's been awesome chatting to you. I know we could chat for another hour.
Yeah, I think we exceeded the time.
Oh yeah. I looked at the time. We've blown the time. You know, it's been great. So I didn't want to stop. But thank you so much for joining me. And I'm looking forward to the group discussion as well. And have a great time in Porto.
You too.
And
Thank
then
you.
wait, before we go, I've been practicing this. Bye. Fica bem.
That stay well in Portuguese, by the way.
Yes. Bye.
Bye.